call to order the meeting of today, January 27th, 2020, Parks and Shade Tree Commission meeting. Roll call. We have our members present, Rachel Macha to my left, Marcia Maldiz to my right, and we have our city solicitor, Glenn Mendelis, to my right. We have a quorum. 3 of the committee members are present. Do we have any correspondence? No, thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes of the meeting held on July 22nd, 2019?
Yes.
And are there any additions or corrections to be made? No? Okay, is there a motion to accept? We'll do them individually. The meeting minutes of July 22nd, 2019?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. In the meeting minutes on December 16th, from December 16th, 2019? Any additions or corrections?
Nope.
Okay, is there a motion to accept?
Move to approve.
Second? Is there a second? Okay.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Any old business? I would just like to make a note that we did get the document we requested from the city arborist. We thank you for that. The tally of trees.
Yes, agreed, thank you.
And is any old business on this side? No? Okay. Well, we have new business, and the purpose of this meeting is to conduct an administrative appeal hearing pursuant to the Comprehensive Tree Ordinance, Chapter 253 of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach. Before I read the case number into the file, have all appropriate individuals and all legal notices been posted? Yes. Thank you. Appeal hearing number 1119-07, requested by Mark Shaw of Campian Hruby Landscape Architects on behalf of Frances Halfaker and Jo Herman, owners of the property located at 46 Kent Street, pursuant to Section 253-36 of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, and pertains to a determination of an appeal for a fee in lieu of mitigation as opposed to the planting of 10 inches of caliper. Is Mr. Shaw here?
No, he's not. He should be here. But my name's Jo Herman. I'm representing Jo Herman.
Okay.
He was supposed to be here.
Well, we don't see your name here on the official documents submitted in a record. Right. Well, what would does the commission have a preference or an objection if we wait a few minutes? Courtesy of a few minutes?
Yeah.
Have you heard from the gentleman? And, okay.
We have his phone number. Should we give him a call?
Oh, he's supposed to be here, so, I guess they can always file again to be heard. Now, let me ask Counselor, we could certainly hear from the arborist and certainly from the public. You would be officially a member of the public. Since I don't believe your name is on the permit request or? No. And certainly, I think we're within our means to make to deliberate and make a decision in lieu of the representative.
You are. The representative does not have to be here. We've had the legal notices been posted. They've been informed, and
so is it the spirit of the commission that we'd like to go ahead and hear without Mr. Shaw being present? Is there any objection to moving forward?
No objection. No objection.
Okay. Well, then the first would have been the appellate, but let's hear from the arborist and then the member of the public. Thank you.
Okay. The following is the report of the city arborist with regard to the above referenced appeal that is to be heard before the commission on Monday, January 27, 2020. The permit has been issued in order to mitigate the hazardous nature of the tree, so today's case is regarding any applicable planting or fee in lieu of mitigation. A tree removal application requested the removal of one 25-inch diameter dead oak from the lot. From the new construction of the home and subsequent remodeling, 5 permits have been issued, totaling 128 inches of mitigation. The trees remaining on site are as shown in the table below, which totals 130 inches. The minimum density for the lot is 4 trees, or 12 inches, with a maximum of 1 evergreen and 2 small species. The minimum density of 12 inches plus the mitigation of 128 inches totals 140 inches. The required 140 inches minus the 130 remaining on site leaves the lot with a deficit of 10 inches. Since all of the lot's deciduous canopy trees have been removed, it does not meet minimum density sub-requirements either. In order to meet minimum density requirements in Corp 253-26B, one medium or large-sized non-evergreen and non-ornamental must be planted. The remaining 7 inches of mitigation can be any species native to Delaware. It is the city arborist's recommendation that the commission require the lot to meet the minimum density requirements and grant the appropriate fee in lieu for the remaining 7 inches of caliper. The Parks and Shade Tree Commission has the sole authority to grant a fee in lieu of mitigation. 253-36 Administrative Appeals. Fee in lieu of mitigation. A fee in lieu of mitigation may be granted only by the Park and Shade Tree Commission through the appeals process and upon a recommendation from the city arborist. Before granting a fee in lieu of mitigation, the applicant must demonstrate that the replacement of trees on the project site is not a viable option because meeting the requirements of this article would result in undue hardship, that all reasonable alternatives relevant to protection and mitigation have been exhausted, and that granting a fee in lieu of mitigation will not adversely impact the intent and purposes of these regulations.
Do either of the commissioners have any questions?
I have one. Now that I've reread this and I'm getting confused, are they required to meet the minimum density requirements, which they're not meeting now?
Yes, they're going to have to.
They have to plant.
It's my understanding that the commission can authorize a fee in lieu of mitigation, not a fee in lieu of minimum density. But I would defer to the city solicitor on that.
Okay, so they do have to plant something.
Yeah, I don't see how you can get around replacing the tree
Okay,
with an oak or a river birch or something to meet the
Right.
minimum density basic requirements.
okay.
But the reason we're here is to determine that, right? That was the whole process they went through.
Well, they do have to plant.
They're here.
Well,
You're
that-
here to determine a
but-
fee in lieu of mitigation
Right.
for the 7 inches.
That's what they're asking for.
For the remainder.
I also have a question about the tree density because
Mhm.
the minimum requirement is 3 on that property, correct? No.
No, that is incorrect.
I mean,
It
not
is-
according to the caliper, but
It's 3 per 5,000 square feet.
in how many, remind me how many square, I can read this.
Double lot.
No, it's not quite a double lot. It is oversized, though. I don't know if that information is even in the packet.
Yeah, I'm not.
That's part of their survey. So we have all that from,
So maybe I'm a little confused. I saw a city report above referenced a tree removal. There's this one here, the memorandum dated January 6th. This is the lot, of course, with the 25 arborvitae, right? And
arborvitae.
the
Yep.
1 red bud, the 4 purple plum, the 1 dogwood, the 1 pine, the 1 pine, the 1 dogwood.
Yes.
And the dogwood is no longer on part of our allowable list, or it is? I know at one point it was.
No, a dogwood is a native species. The problem here is that there's a sub-requirement where you have a maximum of 1/3 evergreen, maximum of 1 small species per 5,000 square feet. So even though they have a bunch of trees, they don't meet those sub-requirements because they don't have any deciduous canopy trees, such as an oak or a river birch.
So even though redbud and dogwood are deciduous, they're not considered deciduous canopy trees?
No, they're small trees, ornamental.
I see. But to meet the requirements, dogwood is still on the list, along with crepe myrtle and those others?
Crepe myrtle has never been on the list. That's a non-native species.
I see, okay.
So if it's there, we can count it,
I see.
but we can't permit it for planting since it has to be a species native to Delaware.
Okay, so to summarize this brief discussion I just had with you, this discourse.
No, go ahead.
They need, putting aside caliper, they would still need at least one tree.
To meet the minimum
Meet the
density.
minimum density.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that's what I wanted to understand.
And maybe it's just the plot here that shows the placement, but it just doesn't even seem like there's room. on
Well,
this.
they're taking out a 25-inch tree, so one can only assume that there's room for a
Where,
3-inch.
where is that on this?
It's to the back right of the pool house.
An arrow pointing to it where there's a dead tree to be removed.
Oh, okay, I see it. I didn't see it before. Just a black and white.
Well, you'll have your chance, not yet. Any other questions from the panel for the arborist? So I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the minimum caliper that they would have to plant is 10 inches? Or, because the difference between the 140 and the 130, the remaining,
They plant 1 3-inch.
The arborist has made a recommendation. Maybe you can go through the recommendation that you made in your report.
yeah, that'd be good.
So, it is the city arborist recommendation that the commission require the lot to meet the minimum density requirements and grant the appropriate fee in lieu of mitigation for the remaining 7 inches of caliper.
So under, as I understand it, under the arborist interpretation, there is 3 inches of a deciduous large canopy tree required to meet minimum density requirements, then the remaining 7 inches of mitigation caliper, she's recommending you grant a fee in lieu of mitigation. So a 3-inch, so to your point, question about 3 inches of.
Got it.
Right, okay.
So almost taking the oak that's there, putting a 3-inch oak or similar back, and then pay the balance on the 7 remaining inches.
Any other questions?
Not for me.
Okay, thank you. We'll like to hear from the public. Please come up, introduce yourself and where you're from. Right here in the front. Thank you, sir.
Which one's better? Ann, is that one working already? Okay.
Testing? No. Testing.
Yep.
Okay. My name is Jeff Turner. I'm representing Nancy Herman at 46 Kent Street in Rehoboth.
Nancy and Frances?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Just want to clear that up. Okay.
So you were saying about isn't there already a tree that we just took down? Is that the tree in question? The oak tree?
Yeah, the one that was dead, we let them remove it because we obviously can't make people wait.
Right, so
Yeah.
that tree's already been taken out?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what we're talking about, replacing something in that area?
Yes, and then the balance. Basically, over the years, when they built the new house and did all the remodeling, they removed a lot of trees, a lot of big trees. And so that accrues over the course of the permits. And now with this final one, they have planting requirements, and they feel, their landscape architect and I feel that they're a little tight. If you're trying to smush 10 inches, it's going to be difficult. And I gave them the option, you can fit that, they can fit those trees in there. That's not a question. It becomes a question of quantity over quality. And so I think based on the landscape architect's recommendation to the property owner that this is the path they decided to pursue, to pay whatever the appropriate fee in lieu is for the trees, rather than trying to jam a bunch of little trees in a corner or something.
Okay, but you still said that we need like a tree of 3-inch diameter in that area?
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to necessarily be there. They could put it anywhere on their property because the front yard has some open lawn space too, but they'd have to be cautious of the overhead utilities. So it probably would make the most sense to go back where it close to where it is.
But it's got to be 3-inch diameter,
Yes.
so we could do like a river birch, you say?
And a river birch, because if it's a multi-stem, they go by height, so it'll just be 12 foot, and those are pretty easy to find.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so.
Okay, well, that was my question, like, we've already taken the tree out and what we can put back in.
Right.
So that's,
Very good, yeah, and that's something you have choices, and you can certainly, if that, when we rule, you can certainly work with the arborist on
okay,
on
yeah,
choosing
different
what's
choices
best.
in the homeowner.
You got it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
With the
the
homeowner,
landscape architect, Meredith, we've been in contact, so she, I can send her the list, because I'm sure they'll sub it out, the planting. So there's, dozen or so trees they can choose from.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, thank you.
Thank you. There's no one else here to speak, possibly speak, so we're ready to deliberate.
Just for the record, just clear the public hearing now, it is now closed, and it's
Yes,
for your
the public
deliberations.
hearing is officially closed, at least for comments. I wasn't sure how to proceed because the hearing is still open. We're still deliberating, but the public comment period is closed. So let's.
Well, there's 7 inches left, and we can grant an appropriate fee. And if you want to do it somewhat strictly, that would be 2 trees at $500 a tree, and still have an inch left over that.
Rachel, Commissioner Ratchett, do you have any comments?
Actually, can I just ask one more question? The trees that are remaining, they're all pretty healthy?
Most of the trees you can see by the sizes, there's very few older trees, just the 2 pines, and they're in fair to good condition, I would say. There's no reason to think they're going to die in the next couple of years. And the other ones are all new plantings from when they built the house in the previous couple of years. So they're all still healthy as well.
Thank you. That was my last
Other thoughts? I have a few thoughts I'd like to share. Usually I like the other commission members to go first, but I'll.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think certainly we should require the tree be planted. But there are significant plantings on the property. And, we are not required. It's at our discretion as to what to deal with the caliper difference, correct, Counselor?
If you're going to grant a fee in lieu of mitigation, the fee can be any place from 0 to whatever
Yes.
higher number
So I think it would be appropriate in this instance to require the tree and grant a fee in lieu of mitigation of the remaining caliper of $0.
And why 0?
Because there's significant plantings on the property, and
I
I
agree
don't
with that
know
part.
that we need to tax them essentially
Right.
for the remaining caliper amount.
And they've paid a fee to come here.
They paid a fee to come here. That's a good point.
What's the fee to come here?
$250.
Are arborvitae considered native, Liz? Arborvitae?
No, they are not. They're considered an ornamental screening tree. And that's, the reason they have to plant this one tree is because basically, they only have 2 legitimate trees on the property. Both the dogwoods, purple plum, red bud, those are all small, tiny little.
Right.
And basically what they did with the arborvitae, if you guys actually went to the site, is they lined the back fence with them, which is great. We love green fences, but that doesn't quite get across the intent or desire of the tree city and the tree code.
Right, but just to clarify, rosebud and dogwood can get up to about 30 feet, and their trunks may not get terribly wide, but they can mature quite
It's
tall.
rare to see that. They may get that size, but most of them,
Tell us how tall they get.
I'd say given conditions, 20, maybe 25. It depends on the type of
Significant
dogwood.
height.
That is, in tree world, that's not significant
I
height.
understand what you're
So,
saying. Not when you're
that's-
talking about sequoia or oak or maple, I get it.
Yeah, that's still considered, they're considered trees, but they're
Yes.
not a shrub, but they're considered small trees.
Right, so one of the things I always ask the commission to consider is, our purpose here. What are we doing, right? We want green attractive trees of various canopy levels throughout the city. And I just ask you all to keep that in mind as we continue to deliberate these issues.
Do we know if the homeowners are planning to put other trees on the property in addition to the river birch in the back that you're going to replace from the
I don't think so.
Well, and a river birch does not have much of a canopy. It might be acceptable, but it's not a canopy.
Well, they still can get,
Like an oak?
no, I mean, an oak can get 100 feet tall. River birch, depending on what variety, 40 to 60, just depending.
I wonder if they've considered putting a more canopy type tree in that back corner to replace.
Well, they haven't talked about that, but well, in the end, it doesn't matter because the river birch and an oak meet the same qualification in the way we're.
Choices, and river birch is among them, so.
Yeah.
If Liz isn't feeling like it's going to create the canopy that was there, that's why I'm asking the question.
It's on the list.
Really,
Yeah, it's on the list in the same category as a red oak and a hickory. You know, in my professional opinion, a pine is a canopy tree. It's just for some reason our code divides it and makes it an evergreen, separate thing. So, I mean, those two pines that are there still are good-sized trees.
But they are evergreen.
Yes, exactly. So they can't count as the one deciduous medium/large canopy.
Like to propose a motion?
I thought that's what you did.
No, mine was not a motion. Mine
Oh.
was just a suggestion. I was not making a motion at that time. I will make a motion if no one else would like to.
I'll make one.
Okay.
I make a motion that we do ask the homeowners to consider more of a canopy tree versus the river birch. Consider, if they would. And if they would consider that, then I would waive the fee for mitigation of having to plant more trees.
Got a fee?
Fee, I'll say $1.
Now, when you request that's the motion, let's open for discussion. So when you request,
Let's see if you get a second first.
oh, you know, you're right.
Probably
Am I the only one who can
I
say?
You're the only one who
figured
can
with such
second
a
for-
small group, we can discuss each motion, but it's okay, go ahead.
You
Thanks.
can
Sid.
second it for discussion purposes, and then you don't have to, of course, you don't have to vote for the motion if you second it.
Is there a second? If there's no second, the motion will die for lack of a second. We can entertain other motions. Okay, the motion dies for lack of a second. Is there another motion? I would like to make a motion, but I wanted to address, unfortunately, we can't make a determination of fee in lieu based on a suggestion that something be accepted or not, because it's uncertain. So it can't be contingent on a suggestion being accepted. You know what I mean? We can't say, if they accept the canopy tree.
The homeowner isn't here to ask them,
Right.
right?
But again, we can't predicate it. So my motion would be that we encourage the homeowner to select a tree other than a river birch, although we realize they can choose anything on the list. We acknowledge that, but we would encourage them to consider a larger shade tree. And that the second part of the motion is that the fee in lieu of mitigation for the remaining caliper be 0. Is there a second? Okay, there's no second, it dies for lack of a second. Is there another motion?
All right, I'll step up. I move that the tree that they plant is a large canopy tree, and they pay a fee of $500.
And when you say large canopy tree, what does that mean from a
Oak or
caliper standpoint?
maple,
But does it have to have a minimal caliper?
You have to
Well, it
satisfy the
has to
3 inches required under the code,
The
so.
3 inches or wider.
But I don't know if we can require a specific species. There's a list that the homeowner can choose from, correct, Liz?
Yes, there is a
That we
list.
cannot require a specific species.
That's really my question. We can't.
No,
Just encourage or have them
we,
consider.
we can encourage them, and they can ignore it if they wish, but, you know.
Yeah, in the past, when an owner's been here, they've said, I'm happy to do that. You know, that makes it easy, but they're not here to.
Right.
So would you continue your motion then with it being any of the large canopy deciduous trees on the list? And then a $500 fee in lieu of mitigation? Yes. So that's the current motion. Would need a second.
Is there a second? The motion dies for lack of a second.
All right, I'll try another one.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Commissioner.
So I'll take the first part of yours, which is any large canopy tree, fee of mitigation of $1.
I will second that. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Well, am I allowed to add to the discussion? I don't know.
If I allow it,
Okay.
sure, go ahead.
Well, just for practicality's sake, I'm not sure what the point of a dollar is, but the amount of staff time to process that dollar, the check,
Is zero if you'd like to
Yeah,
amend it to
the-
0 or
I'll
higher.
amend it to
it would cost us
Okay.
much more than $1.
I second the amendment. The amendment is accepted as 0.
fine.
So the motion now reads, offered by Commissioner Macha and seconded by Commissioner Wargatz, that, that one large canopy tree be planted and that the fee in lieu of mitigation will be 0. It has been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you. Other business.
Do you understand the, okay, good.
And so just as follow-up, because their official representative record is not here, I'll say for the public that the homeowner should be in touch with the arborist. They'll get notice to determine from the list what tree is to be planted.
The homeowner or
Sorry.
the applicant?
The applicant, I apologize. Yeah, the applicant. Okay. Now the hearing is officially closed, and the city arborist report.
I mean, I guess we can just start off if you guys had questions. That's the best I could pull the data and the format we keep it for all the pruning and removals. But if you guys have questions, you can ask them now.
I looked at, thank you. Any questions?
I actually just had a couple of process questions. So obviously you have the condition of the trees here as well. And obviously you must just, do a review of those trees on a regular basis and update this list, right? And then if they're in poor
Well,
shape or dead, you remove them?
So we have going back to when the city contracted with Davy to do a tree inventory, we had a baseline for the inventory, and I update that manually every year when we get ready to do our tree pruning specifications. But if somebody complains about something, or if I notice something during the season, I can note it or change it then. But generally, it's just annually.
Okay. And then the other question that we had as a part of this report was the financial side of this and how much we've spent on these trees and how much we've taken in.
These specific trees, well, the in-house ones,
overall.
well, the in-house is just, I have one part-time staff who prunes trees amongst other duties in the off-season, and then from March through November, takes care of the mowing and landscaping. So that would just be his wage times the hours.
No, I meant the cost of the trees, I'm sorry, that money that we've taken in, like fees that we've talked
Well,
about.
what's in the account? When we have required
I think it's in the 80,000, and we encumber 7 to 15 every year to be used out of that account. So I think this coming budget season, we have $15,000 encumbered for use out of this account.
Excuse me, I spoke with the finance director, and the amount that is, the mitigation fund is $89,294.38.
Thank you.
No, enjoy your Monday.
You're dismissed.
Riveting stuff.
Thank you.
The applicant, they'll get a copy of everything.
Yeah, of course. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that report.
My
preparing-
keys.
Thank you for preparing the report. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
Should be on the finance.
I know, sorry, the one comes out with the abbreviations, the four-letter things. So those are the botanical names, the first two of each botanical name. So sorry that was complicated, but I didn't spend the time it would require to go back to manually change everything over, because that's how it goes in the database. But everything else, I think, is pretty
So
self-explanatory.
these are all city trees.
Yes. Yes, so if somebody has a private property tree that needs to be pruned, they're usually, I mean, the city has the right to prune it if it overhangs the sidewalk, but not the responsibility. So usually it'll go, if it's like a 5-minute, one clip type of thing, we'll do it. If it's a significant amount of time, it'll go out towards code enforcement and they'll be sent a letter to come in compliance.
Is there any other business? You heard? I have a question.
Sure.
So with the Lake Avenue renovation that concluded last year, a number of large street trees were removed.
Oh, you mean phase
Phase
one,
one,
the
yeah.
couple years ago? Okay.
How does the city address the loss of the city trees when such a streetscape is performed? So the
So,
equivalent number of trees weren't planted on the street.
so with that one, those plans were all done before I started working at the city. So I don't know if that's really an apples to apples comparison. With the upcoming phase 2, we're going to be in the positive. We're removing 2 trees that are directly above stormwater pipes that lead into Lake Gerard. So in order to replace the pipes, the trees have to come out. And then we'll be planting maybe at least doubling or tripling the amount that are coming out. So we haven't finalized the landscape plan because it won't be done until not this April, but the April after that is the target install date. So still a year and a few months away.
Well, thanks. I realize that was before your time. Maybe you could draw from some resources. I'd be interested. I happen to live on the street, and I had some neighbors ask me, and it's a legitimate question. I didn't have an answer. Is a lot of mature trees were taken down.
There were 4 removed and 3 put back, yeah.
Yeah, so
And that was because that's all the streetscape allowed for. Now, most of the time in this city, we're in a net like double, triple. Like the last time I checked, for every tree the city removes, so every tree I order removed on city streets, we're replacing with 2 or 3. So
yeah,
I think it was 3 and change last
The
time.
community was looking to have the equivalent, given the street architecture, the street landscape that was completed, but just to know if the city has a rule that, you know,
There's no
the other
official.
tree needs to be planted somewhere else, or
There's no
park or whatever.
official rule for the city to abide by with that. It's just best practices.
practices.
Yeah,
Okay.
so with the one we're doing now, the 2 have to come out. They can't be replaced where they are. We're already at our optimum stocking rates in all of the parks, so we're not looking to add trees to those. So it would be along the streets, or in this case, the area in front of the breakers. So
So that's considered just a loss of a tree, essentially. If you're
Yeah,
doing
but you have to-
tallies of city trees.
yeah, but that's, I mean, we don't, like I said, that project was all designed prior to my starting here and prior to our public works director being here. So we've developed a better process now. So I just,
Okay,
I-
no, I just interested in.
but we also have to think of it, you're thinking my street, 4 trees, 3
I'm
trees.
not thinking my street, I'm
Well,
thinking in general.
No, and that's what I mean, is that we're speaking in grand terms of urban forestry. So we may be -1 on that street, but we're gonna be +8
Absolutely.
on the next project.
Right,
And so
that's-
we have to take that all in stride because there will be, and I would think 10 years from now, if we say did Lake Avenue the first phase then, it might be a different outcome because originally there were no trees intended to be planted there. The bump outs were a change order spurred by commissioners at the
No,
time.
I think it makes sense. It's, you may lose something here and you gain it over here.
I think it's probably best practice to try and put 2 back for every 1 you lose because there will be times like that one where we just can't do it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So there is a planting plan for the whole city, where to put trees?
No, there's never been presented or approved planting plan to the commissioners, no.
Don't you think we should have one? Where we should be planting trees and, I've seen in Central Park where a big oak has come down and nothing else has ever gone in.
Well, that's a wooded passive park, so that's different. So you would rely on natural regeneration and occasionally some supplemental plantings, which we do have planned because of the ivy treatments. And it actually is regenerating pretty well. Maybe not as good as deer, but tend not to restock them as much as you might supplement streets or more built-out parks like, say, Lake Draw or something like that. But I think if they ever were to do a planting plan, you would have to run that off of a urban forest or community forest management plan. That would be one of the goals or objectives in there, would be to establish that and have it approved by the commissioners, which would be a pretty laborious task for sure.
Any other questions or comments for Liz?
All right.
Is there a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn?
Second? All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.